Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are Group A, and we will be evaluating Parey 2022, focusing on care as a cost to the individual.
Question 2, when restated, reads: What is the prevalence of the view that caring for OPWD is a cost to the individual among Trinidadians? This question is a descriptive question, and the variable is care as a cost to the individual, specifically highlighting mental, emotional, and physical strains associated with care. The parameter is the mean score of the view of care as a cost to the individual among the population, Trinidadians aged 18 years and older, and the mean score of the view of care as a cost to the individual amongst the sample is the statistic.
This question employed the use of univariate analysis appropriately as it is applicable to descriptive questions which carry a single variable. It utilized mean and standard deviation analysis, the correct test suited for univariate analysis and descriptive research questions. According to Parey 2022, the mean score of 8.64 corresponded with medium prevalence of this care view among adult Trinidadians. This conclusion may be drawn as the sample has been ensured as representative of the population and random given its sampling process. These results therefore can be generalized to the wider Trinidadian adult population. Now, as we pivot to research question 4, which reads, what are the factors associated with the various care views among Trinidadians? We can restate the question with our care view in mind to ask what are the factors associated with the view of care as a cost to the individual among Trinidadians. We have identified the dependent variable as care as a cost to the individual, and we have identified predictor variables as age, employment status, ethnicity, education level, experiences with OPWD, and other PWD. The parameter for this is the beta coefficient for care as a cost to the individual amongst the Trinidadian adult population, and the statistic is the beta coefficient for care as a cost to the individual among the sample. For research question 4, the researcher utilized multivariate analysis appropriate for analyzing causal research questions with more than 3 variables. Parey's use of the negative binomial quasi-maximum likelihood estimator regression analysis was also applicable for testing these variables. Regression analysis indicated that employment status and age were the only 2 significant factors associated with care as a cost to the individual for the entire sample. Now, we would like to determine whether population validity was adequately addressed in Parey 2022 across the data collection, analysis, and interpretation stages. In the data collection phase, we find that the researcher mitigated population validity threats at the data collection phase as the sample was both randomly selected and representative of the entire adult Trinidadian population. A 3.32% margin of error and a 95% confidence level were also reported. In addition, minimum sample size was exceeded as the study included 891 respondents, equivalent to a response rate of 99.7%. At the data analysis phase, the researcher ensured that population validity threats were also mitigated, ensuring that missing variables were reported on and steps were taken to address the issue. Further, in the interpretation phase, the generalizability of the findings were reported on as it related to the sample being large, representative, and randomly selected. Further, the report on care views towards older persons with disabilities should be focused on participants in Trinidad only and reflective of the views in Trinidad only. According to Parey 2022, a minimum sample size of 887 respondents was determined using a standard sampling formula. Through the use of the Continuous Sample Survey of Population (CSSP) framework, households were randomly sampled, resulting in a sample size of 893 households. Thus, the initial sample represented 893 Trinidadians aged 18 and older, with 1 individual selected per household. The data collected by the Central Statistical Office indicated a response rate of 99.78% of the initial sample size, which reduced the sample size to 891 Trinidadians. A final sample size, n equals 868, was determined after the data was cleaned, analyzed, and the population validity threat was mitigated. Thus, the sample size employed in Parey 2022 is 868 Trinidadians aged 18 years and older. The study utilized a two-stage sampling process in which households in each enumeration district were randomly sampled, probability inversely proportional to their size. Representativeness was ultimately achieved in Parey 2022 as the final sample size of 868 participants closely reflects the target population. The sample's representativeness may be validated by the minimal margin of error of only 3.32% and the high confidence level of 95% observed after data cleaning was completed. Furthermore, due to the random and rigorous sampling process and the standardized data collection procedures, Parey 2022 was able to produce a representative sample. The study identifies 6 distinct care views, each of which is shaped by various demographic and experiential factors. For care view 1, it was influenced by age, employment status, ethnicity, and direct experience with older persons with disability. For care view 2, it was strongly associated with gender, education level, ethnicity, and cohabitation with older persons with disability. For care view 3, women's perspectives were influenced by their education level and their experience with older persons with disability, while men's views were shaped by their ethnicity. For care view 4, associations were found with education, employment status, and household position. For care view 5, ethnicity, education, and experience with older persons with disability were significant factors. And finally, care view 6 was shaped by ethnicity, personal experience, and disability status. Respondents who live with older persons with disability, their Parey 2022 suggests that the current prevalent social model of care in Trinidad is unsustainable for both maintenance of employment and provision of high-quality informal care. The female and undereducated sectors of the Trinidadian population may disproportionately hold the responsibility of care of older persons with disability. The segregation and exclusion of persons with disabilities from the mainstream education and employment sectors creates dependency on their families and othering by the remainder of the population. Of further note, persons with higher levels of education and those who are employed are less likely to become informal carers for an older person with disability, as the demands of this role of carer influence employed carers to reduce their working hours or stop working altogether. The rigid demands of employment further compound this, and Parey suggests that this be rectified through introduction of flexible working arrangements, as well as the provision of respite services, daycare facilities, and coping interventions to better support the families and the carers of older persons with disabilities. Parey further argues that there is a level of distrust in the quality of care that non-familial services provide, and that there must be closer collaboration between government of Trinidad, private care facilities, and non-governmental organizations so that the needs of older persons with disabilities as well as their families are adequately met. We would like to further recommend that the government of Trinidad produce culturally sensitive training programs for informal carers, which should be made available and free, as well as specific to the group of disability experienced by their older person with disability. The prospective family carer must be trained effectively to handle the resultant challenges associated with the care of older persons with disability and persons with disability in general, so as to improve quality of life for all parties, as well as quality of care. In addition, we'd like to recommend that culturally sensitive and disability sensitive civic education must be made a priority for the Trinidadian government to combat negative stereotypes and notions regarding older persons with disability and persons with disability as well. We further recommend that avenues be increased for engagement and advocacy for older persons with disability to combat segregation, to integrate them fully into society, as well as to include them in solution generation.
The government's proposal to open a national residential care center for older persons with disabilities in Trinidad may seem promising, but it overlooks some crucial cultural and social factors. Firstly, the research conducted in the Parey 2022 journal article suggests that while personal experiences with persons with disabilities improve care views, Trinidad's context often segregates persons with disabilities, especially in schools and workplaces, which was also stated in a Parey 2020 study. This proposed care center, therefore, could further isolate older persons with disabilities from their families and communities, reducing the exposure of Trinidadians to persons with disabilities and potentially lowering care views over time. Secondly, the proposed facility fails to address ethnic differences in care preferences, as highlighted by Brannan and Juarez in 2013. East Indian families, for example, value familism and may prefer at home care, while African and mixed ethnic households may be better served by community based care, according to Gill 2020 and Parry 2022. Thirdly, the general distrust of care systems in Trinidad could make the facility less welcomed, as emphasized by Barrett and others in 2016 and Parry 2021b. Without a regulatory body ensuring quality healthcare, this initiative may disrupt existing informal care networks and family bonds, potentially increasing distrust and care concerns for older persons with disabilities in Trinidad. Therefore, while intended to support caregivers, the National Residential Care Center may not be the best solution for older persons with disabilities in Trinidad. Alternative care options, accounting for ethnic diversity and social factors, including the need for inclusion of older persons with disabilities and family ties, are essential to meet the needs of this vulnerable group.